Hey guys, so today we're redrawing this. This is a screenshot for Castlevania from the NES. Why this? So again, it's a part of a bigger project over on Twitter called Castlevania Redrawn. So before we hop to it, let's jump over to Twitter and show you guys all the current submissions to the project. But I should mention that this is the second redraw project in the recent past. The last one was Super Mario Bros. 3-piece. I'll link it in the video above and below so you guys can find it. Alright, so here we are on Twitter. Scary, I know. So just skimming through this, you guys can see some examples of some of the artwork of the artists who are participating in the project. If you see artists you like, don't hesitate to go and follow them on Twitter and check out their work. These are all amazing pixel artists that decided to contribute to the project. I should mention that the goal for this project is to redraw every single screen from the Castlevania NES game at the end, and then to share it as a visualizer that allows you to scroll piece by piece, see them all connected together, which I think is going to be a pretty impressive thing. Whenever that posts, I'm not sure yet, but whenever it does, I'll make sure to link it in the video description below so you guys can go check that out. But anyway, let's hop back over to my piece and let's see how I set this thing up and make it happen. Alright, so my assignment was Screen 4-2, which is really just a screenshot from Stage 10. And if you played the game, then you know that Stage 10 is an ultimate pain in the ass. Regardless of my feelings about it, I wanted to show us the stage some love. I also should mention that one of the parameters of the project is for us as the artist to stick to the original NES color palette, which I think is one of the strongest features of Castlevania. The colors it uses create such an awesome ambiance and atmosphere with just a handful of colors. I didn't want to venture too far from the source material color-wise. Also, I'm doing something a little bit different than I did for the Mario piece. Instead of creating little teeny tiles to build the scene out of, like the original Castlevania image had to, and all NES games had to, I wanted to draw it from the ground up and handcraft it. I also knew that I really wanted to incorporate some dithering this time around. If you've watched some of my last videos or you follow my Instagram or Twitter accounts, then you'll know that I've steadily started incorporating more dithering into my pieces over the last 6 months or so. I like the grainy quality of it. It looks like a janky computer graphic from an era that's long gone. And whenever I say janky, I mean it in the most endearing way possible. I don't mean that it's ugly or terrible or anything. It just has this kind of like grainy, strange, just old-timey look to it. But anyway, I'm just rambling at this point. Let's build out some more of the scene, and I'll be back in just a moment to share some more insight. Alright, so chiming back in here at this point, I felt pretty comfortable with the ground, so I started to try to figure out the water situation. In the original, there's this arrangement of lines that's trying to indicate some ripples or shine on the water, so I want to do that as well with mine. However, one thing you'll notice at the end of this is that I don't actually animate the ripples in the water. The first reason is that I just wanted to retain some of the chunky, static nature of the original. Then, the even better reason is that it was just too much work. I do add some bubbling bits to give the water a little bit more life later down the road, but also, we're moving on to the background now here in just a second, and my impression is that this looked more like an underground cave ruin mixture, so I tried to simplify this insane texture that was happening in the background to something that hopefully resembles the space between a stalactite and a stalagmite combo, and something that resembles beams that would exist in the foundation of a castle. Alright, so here's the current state of things with the base structure figured out. I got a little experimental with that arch thing, but I thought it echoed the shape of the original terrain in that area pretty well. But the next thing for us to tackle are the piles of bones that are scattered around the image. I wanted to make them a little more readable than they were actually before, so I broke them down into separate, more recognizable bones and then just scattered those around, just playing with what I thought looked good, and then we just went from there. Alright, so here the bones are all finished. You can see the difference between the beginning ones and the final ones. Now that those are all finished, let's just scatter them around the environment to show you what I meant. Alright, so here we have the scene before the bones were added, and here we have the scene after the bones were added. I just scoured them around wherever I felt looked good, like I said, and this is where they landed, and I think it looks pretty good. Alright, next step is to make this fish man that's in the image. As we venture into this little guy, I wanted to echo some of the elements of the design that exist in the creature from the Black Lagoon, as well as Linda the Lungfish from Psychonauts. One thing about Castlevania that I've always found appealing is that it finds a space to exist in between horror and cartoony, and I wanted to bring that to my design on this guy, so I incorporated the horror element on the design in a way that made him look like a fish gasping for air, and I also made the eye look glassy or cloudy. Another thing that came to mind while I was drawing this, speaking of the cloudy eye, was the short story by Edgar Allan Poe called The Telltale Heart. There was a film about it that I watched whenever I was in the 7th grade. You probably haven't seen it or read the story, but it's a film from 1941 where a guy murders another guy over being paranoid about his eye / control over his livelihood, and the heartbeat can be heard underneath the floorboards where he buried him, which is super upsetting, but Edgar Allan Poe's writing had a similar vibe to Castlevania. I know that's a weird reference, but I suppose it makes sense since it was about 10 years after the release of the original Dracula film, and Castlevania is built on top of the lore around Dracula. Here's the final image. You can see that I have this 8-frame animation where he's bobbing and moving and looking all gnarly and crazy and whatever, but the only thing left for us to do now is to finish off the bat and to finish off Simon. So let's venture into those two things here quickly. So, just want to take a moment to say this is the progress of getting the wings of the bat moving. This is similar to a previous video where we made a paratrooper from Mario flap its wings. If you want a deeper description about a flying animation, you can find the video linked above and below. But before we continue, I do want to take just a quick pit stop with the enemies created so far, placed in the scene. So, here they are. I attempted to place them in as close to the same locations that they were in the original image for the sake of consistency. But anyway, it's time to get Simon done, so let's do it. Alright, so there we have it. Simon's all done, which means all the pieces and parts are finished, but if you've seen my other videos, you know I can't really help myself when it comes to adding user interface to a mockup. So let's show you guys a little recap, and then we'll show you the final piece and do an outro. So there we have it, all finished. You can see I added some other little touches outside of just the modified user interface, such as the money bag on the right, the candles in the background, and the water pouring out of the grate in the background as well. Well, anyway, that brings us to the end of this piece. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you're interested, and don't forget to check out all the other amazing art at the hashtag Castlevania Redrawn on Twitter. Anyway, see you guys next time. Bye.